Welcome to Mock 10 Sports in this October 30th, 2023 episode. Appreciate you joining us. Weird weekend across college football this past weekend. A lot of really weird games. Tennessee, Kentucky, Auburn, Mississippi State. Kind of felt like some teams had chances to get back into games, but just never took the driver's seat in games, if that made sense. Both Tennessee and Auburn left some opportunities for both Kentucky and Mississippi State in their respective games, but neither Kentucky and Mississippi State could take advantage. Just a weird week. I don't feel like we learned a lot. You always are learning something, but week 9 went about how I expected it across the board. Maybe it's just me, but I feel like all those games kind of went how I thought they would. But this upcoming Week 10 action, best slate of games going into a weekend so far this season for the SEC. Just a ton across the board. Should be fantastic matchups. Obviously, Bama, LSU, Georgia, Missouri, Ole Miss, Texas A&M. Just really good matchups across the board. We got the first college football playoff revealings tomorrow. Who will be 1 through 4? I'll tell you. I'll tell you who my 1 through 4 would be. Who will be number 1? Who do I think will be number 1? We had some basketball scrimmages. It's that time of year. We're 1 week out from tip-off. Crazy to say. Feels like we just wrapped up the NCAA tournament, thinking about summer scrimmages, inter-squad scrimmages. Just, man, it feels like it's crazy. College basketball season is already here. Remember, we moved. It's supposed to be tonight. The basketball preview is supposed to be tonight. That will be Wednesday. Myself and Max Barr will be live doing that show, the 2023-2024 SEC basketball preview. We will do that on Wednesday specifically, but we're going to talk a little college hoops here tonight, just briefly touching on this past weekend's scrimmages. Week 10 power rankings, I'm going to show you those. Most comfortable rankings I've felt all year. Honestly, most comfortable I've felt with my rankings heading all year. Week 9 gambling picks. Again, just under 500. Not really want to be. What are we doing these last 3 or 4 weeks? We're just getting in the middle of the season. We're just melting. We're just melting. We're South Carolina in right now. No offense to you Gamecock fans listening out there. That's what we're doing right now. Remember the term it used to be? I know it's an ACC school, maybe an SEC school one day, but Clemsoning. Anybody remember that term? Clemsoning. That used to be a term, and then Clemson started being a top-tier program for about 5 to 7 years. Is that a term now? But that's what we've been doing on the money-making weekends. I promise you each week it's got to get better, though. I'm going to do like the Tim Tebow promise this week that I guarantee you it'll be the best we've had since it'll be the best slate we've had rolling into Week 10. But first, let's go around the SEC. Brian Kelly updates us on some injuries. Corner Zy Alexander, defensive tackle Mekhi Wingo will officially miss the Alabama game this upcoming weekend. That's big. It's an already thin secondary. Like I mentioned, the secondary probably means the return of LaTerrence Welch. Kind of remember him getting torched a little bit in the Ole Miss game. Maybe true freshman Ashton Stamps, who Kelly said practiced on Monday. Maybe even throwing Javian Tavino. Maybe him as well. He's repped some corner. He's had some in-game reps, received some praise from Brian Kelly. But from an LSU injury, that's interesting. I mean, I told you, I heard you last week. Mekhi Wingo going to have surgery, going to be out 6 weeks. Said he'll be back to make the playoffs. We'll see about that. Hearing groin injury. But he'd been playing the most consistent on the interior defensive line of anyone for LSU. So this is a big loss for LSU. It's already thin on the defensive front. They're going to have big games this upcoming week between Mason Smith, who struggles against the run, in my opinion, and Jordan Jefferson, who's the West Virginia transfer, done a solid job for LSU so far this season. Secondary is a big question mark, though. I'll be interested to see what strategy will be here for Madhouse. They play a bunch of quarters. I don't know. They make Alabama just keep everything in front of them. I think A&M kind of had that game plan as well, and Alabama just kind of took the hitches all day long. Maybe LSU takes that approach, like, hey, maybe we can buckle down in the red zone. I don't know, but those are the 2 key injury updates from Brian Kelly's press conference today. Corner Zy Alexander and defensive tackle Mekhi Wingo will be out. In the secondary, like I mentioned, LaTerrence Welch, Ashton Stamps, Javian Taviano, y'all are all in the plate. Next man up, guys. Next man up. Y'all are all up to the plate. Moving to Lane Kiffin's press conference today, you had to listen to the whole thing. I got it sent to me, and I listened. And you get subtle jabs towards Jimbo. You know, those two didn't really like each other. Jimbo Fisher's called him a clown in the past. Lane Kiffin's mentioned they've bought teams before at Texas A&M. It's interesting. Here's a quote for you, almost like blowing smoke up Texas A&M's tail a little bit, kind of overhyping them, essentially being like, hey, they're underachieving. But here's the quote, Lane Kiffin quote, it's kind of mind-boggling collection of talent as you watch them offensively, defensively, return game, special teams. It's really like it's an NFL roster in height, weight, speed, explosiveness. They have receivers who can score at any time. The collection of defensive linemen has been one of the best ever. Their linebackers playing the SEC caliber player of the year. He's talking about Adrian Cooper there. He's not wrong there. But you can tell he's overhyping them a little bit. Like, man, they have NFL talent across the board. He didn't say they're underachieving, but also he had one. I think somebody asked him, do you wonder if with Jimbo Fisher's back against the wall, a job on the line, potentially people think, I don't think it's as bad as people think. They do have to have a good showing. They do have to have a good showing this week in Oxford, in my opinion. You can't go get blown out. But Lane Kiffin was asked, do you think Jimbo Fisher's players will have his back? And he mentioned, he was kind of on the hot seat last year, and it didn't seem like they've had his back last year or this year so far. So shots, you can tell both those teams do not like each other. But I just thought if you get time, go watch the Lane Kiffin press conference. I thought it was pretty good. I actually thought it was pretty good. But moving on, let's share the screen here. Preview. The SEC announced its Week 11 TV schedule. We got a lot of 6-day windows here. We got it. For sure, Alabama at Kentucky will be the 11 a.m. Central Standard Time Zone kick on ESPN. Then we got Vanderbilt at South Carolina will be at 11 as well on the SEC Network. Then we have a bunch of 3 different options here. Florida at Tennessee, that could be on CBS at 2:30. That could be on ESPN at 6 o'clock or SEC Network night game at 6:30. Same with Georgia, Ole Miss at Georgia. That could be either the 2:30 CBS game, 6 o'clock ESPN game, 6:30 SEC Network game. And then the other one is a battle of these 3 games right here. Tennessee at Missouri again. Could be the 2:30 SEC game on CBS. Could be the 6 o'clock ESPN game. Could be the 6:30 p.m. SEC Network game. And then Auburn at Arkansas, 3 o'clock on the SEC Network. And then Mississippi State at Texas A&M for sure is the 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time Zone kick on ESPN2. So we got 4 games set. It's the 3 swing games that are waiting to see what happens in the action this week. Obviously you have some big ones. Depending what LSU does against Alabama, depending what Florida does against Arkansas, Ole Miss, obviously A&M, Georgia, Missouri, Tennessee should take care of business against UConn this week, but then Missouri and Georgia. But again, 3 windows right there between the Florida at LSU game, Ole Miss at Georgia, Tennessee at Missouri. We got the 2:30 CBS game on the docket waiting to be filled, the 6 o'clock ESPN window waiting to be filled, and then the SEC Network night game, Cole Kubelik and the boys. But this is the Week 11 schedule, November 11th schedule to be exact. It's another good slate. We still got some time to work out, but man, it's a real sleeper game for Bama, isn't it? The week after LSU, 11 a.m. in the Bluegrass State at Kroger. That'll be an interesting one right there. That'll be an interesting one there. Moving on for that, I told you we talk a little basketball. We had some exhibitions this week, some good ones. Arkansas beat Purdue 81-77 in overtime at Bud Walton Arena, but 19,000 people there. It's already basketball season in Fayetteville, guys. Let's call it what it is. I went back and watched it. Really impressed with both teams. The Houston transfer for Arkansas, Tremont Mark, took over the game at the end, hit a 3 to tie it up, but he's going to bring a lot from a defensive end. I like that addition for Eric Musselman and them. Then Trevon Brazile, the Missouri transfer. Arkansas would have had a much better season if he stayed healthy last year. He was good. He was a real problem for Purdue. Got a bunch of his points from beyond the arc, the free throw line, finished with 15. Like what I saw to Trevon Brazile. He could be SEC Player of the Year caliber type guy. He could. Then you got Louisville transfer, L. Ellis, and Khalif Battle, the Temple transfer. Both had good games. It felt like an NCAA tournament team, 2 potential Final Four teams just going at it. This was a fun game to go back and watch. I recommend it if you could. You can go to the ESPN app and rewatch it. These exhibition games are starting to get fun. Remember, I'm about to talk a little bit. Tennessee and Michigan State played yesterday as well. That was actually on the Big Ten Network. I watched that one live. But Arkansas, this is the deepest Musselman team I think they've had in a while. I expect – call me crazy. We got our basketball live show on Wednesday. This could be Musselman's real chance to go win the league this year, though. I like this team. I really do. I like this team. A bunch of good different puzzle pieces fit in, and you add depth. I know everybody kind of talks about Musselman struggles in conference play, turns it on tournament play. Just because he's never won the conference doesn't mean he never will. That makes sense. Just because he's never won it doesn't mean he won't ever. So it'll be interesting. I think I would be shocked if Tennessee or Arkansas don't win the league. But speaking of Tennessee, they held on the road to beat Michigan State at the Breslin Center, 89-88 in a charity game for the Maui Strong Fund. It was good. They did a really good job. I think the other game was Illinois-Kansas. But they did a really good job of they had both coaches on the mic during the game. It was fun. They both got a lot of good work. But Tennessee came out on fire. We're opening up a lead 18-1. Factor in, this was without Zakai Ziegler coming off an MCL tear, and Santiago Vescovi had something going on, family reasons for Uruguay. But those are their two starting guards, and Tennessee did this. It's impressive. The Northern Colorado transfer, Dalton Knecht, very impressive player. Dalton Gainey, the USC upstate player transfer, very impressive player. Tennessee, man, Tennessee's got this is probably one of Rick Barnes' best opportunities to get to that Elite Eight Final Four run he's been vying for a long time. I was really impressed with Tennessee. I know it was just an exhibition, but Tennessee and Arkansas, very impressive this week. We'll get into more basketball on Wednesday, but just running through some other exhibitions. Alabama drops an exhibition to Wake Forest, 88-80. Alabama drops to 0-2 in their two exhibition games. Again, don't take a ton. Alabama lost by 30 last year to TCU, ended up winning the league, was the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament. But it does look like Alabama has some they didn't turn the ball over a lot against TCU in that first scrimmage. They did yesterday against Wake Forest. Defense, I think they're still trying to figure out their defensive rotation. Losing Charles Bediako unexpectedly to the NBA draft hurt them. They're still trying to figure out with Nick Pringle, the Muhammad Wagi kid transfer from West Virginia. Not where they thought he'd be at this point. I mean, he can't get there. He's just not there right now. Who else got it? Sam Walters looks like he can shoot it from 3. The high school kid they took from Florida, done a fantastic. Looks like he can shoot the basketball. Got a little bit of heavy feet though defensively. Could be a liability once teams start getting more film. They may attack him. So it will be interesting from there. Aaron Estrada, the Hofstra transfer, looks like he's the real deal. Remember, Alabama was out without Mark Sears here. So without Mark Sears here, he hadn't played in any of the exhibition games. They open up against a solid Morehead State team next Monday night. Should be an interesting first test. But again, Alabama 0-2 in their first exhibition games. Don't take a lot from that, but also defense going to be an issue offensively. Alabama, I think, is going to get theirs most nights. Mississippi State went to Hattiesburg, beat Southern Miss 60-54, 6-point win. Freshman guard from Madison Ridgeland Academy in Jackson from MRA. He's going to be the real deal. The guard scored 13 points. Remember, no Tolu Smith. I like this Mississippi State team. I could see them starting off a little slow without Tolu Smith and the Marshall transfer. But give them some time. About a quarter way through the conference play, I like Mississippi State. I still expect them to be a tournament team. Auburn, this was one of those secret games, so not much out there. Apparently beat Furman 110-77. But this was the same Furman team that upset Virginia in the first round of the NCAA tournament this past week. This past year, the Paladins. But it sounds like Auburn's going to be more of a consistent scoring team this year. FIU transfer Denver Jones played well. It's just the depth at point guard for them. That'll be real interesting with Trey Donaldson, Aiden Holloway. How do they defend on the perimeter at the guard play? I think it's going to be a question for Bruce Pearl and his team. Georgia is currently playing Eastern Kentucky as we speak right now. I was going to bring that up. Let's see what the score was. I was checking that score as we were rolling in here. Georgia is up right now as of 8 minutes ago, according to Jordan D. Jordan Hill. Georgia's up 80-63 with 8:32 in the half. Again, this is an exhibition for Mike White and his team as well. But just rolling through some SEC basketball scores right there. But it is time for the Week 9 SEC football review. Kind of started to shorten up the review a little bit. I know you guys want to get ahead. We're looking to the future into the Week 10 slate. So just give you some of my thoughts from the 5 matchups from Week 9. But starting off, Tennessee continues its dominant ways against Kentucky in a 33-27 win in Lexington. It was a good get-right game for Tennessee against the Kentucky team. To be fair to Kentucky, probably played one of its best games of the year in regards to the passing game. Tennessee got back to its winning ways of running the football and stopping the run, which is always a recipe for success in football. The Vols averaged 5.4 yards per carry and held Ray Davis in the Kentucky run game to just 3 yards on the dot, just 3 yards per carry on the dot. It was actually a really well-played game. I mean, 0 turnovers for both teams. And for it being a matchup with the 2 most penalized teams, the 13th and 14th most penalized teams in the league, there were only 13 penalties in total. But the difference The difference in this game from watching it live, going back and watching it, was that Tennessee converted every need to have it play. What I mean for that, when Kentucky had a chance to get off the field, convert a third down, not jump off sides on a critical fourth down situation when Tennessee's going for it, either Kentucky just totally dropped the ball or Tennessee actually made a play. Also, too, Kentucky's tackling, very underwhelming. Kentucky's usually a really good tackling team. I compliment them on it every year. They've not really tackled that well at all this year in general, specifically on Saturday, though. But Tennessee, give them credit. They converted in every big-time situation. This Tennessee offense, though, looks very comfortable when Joe Milton is involved in the run game. They need to keep it up. They got UConn this week. They got two big games, Missouri and Georgia. Those are their two big games. And I think Tennessee's got the best running back group in the conference with Jalen Wright, Jabari Small, Dylan Sampson. I like all three of those dudes. It's a really good running back room. Now for Kentucky, reviewing them, I actually took a lot of positives out of this game outside of the actual putting another loss in the loss column for them. Just again, not making plays when they had to. They had opportunities to get off the mat. I mean, Devin Leary, I think, played his best game of the season, 28 for 39, 372 yards and 2 touchdowns. I thought he played really well. Looked comfortable, precise. Hold on, I'm going to check that real. 3-7. Let's see. Devin Leary, Tennessee versus Kentucky. Box score. Let me check that number. I don't want to be giving you wrong stuff. Let's see. 1 second. Yeah, 372 yards over. Yeah. So we had it. 372. It's his best game. 28 for 39, 372 yards, 2 touchdowns. It's his best game of the season. Looked comfortable, looked precise and confident in the game plan. Tennessee was not trying to get beat deep. They were going to see, hey, we're going to load the box, stop Ray Davis. We don't think Devin Leary can beat us. And he almost did. But it was a really impressive display. It really was by Kentucky offense in general. Wasn't a lot of drop balls. It really wasn't. There was not a lot of drop balls. I think overall it was Kentucky's best offensive display this season. It really was. It really was. It was the best. It was the best they've looked offensively all year. I mean, I thought Tim Banks, Tennessee's defensive coordinator, had a solid game plan. I'd have done the same thing. I would have loaded the box and dared them to beat me. But Kentucky played well enough to win this game. Now, you never want to lose, but you can take a lot from this so they can finish the season strong. I'll be honest, that last drive, I did not like, second to last drive, I did not like the third down call, 3rd and 11 play call at the start of the fourth quarter. Ended up sending your field goal kicker out there who was not that great for a 53-yard field goal. He could have called something better. I mean, it was almost like a hole shot. He'd have fitted him. Devin Leary was a cover 2 high. He almost had to fit it in just into a hole between the safety and corner. It was a tough ass. Wasn't a great throw, one of his worst throws of the night, but it was a tough ass. Didn't really like the play call, though. But where do we go from here for both these teams? Tennessee now sits 6-2, 3-2 with a game against UConn this weekend. Kentucky sits at 5-3, 2-3 with a trip to Starkville this weekend, a place they traditionally have not played well at. Tennessee should feel good where it's at. I mean, they can go split the Missouri-Georgia game. They finished 9-3. Now, again, Tennessee fans got after me on Twitter last week. I said it was a little bit of a slip. Is the Josh Heupel year three slip just a coincidence, or is it a real thing? Probably a little too early to tell. The Vol Nation was kind of insinuating I was saying it was a thing. I was more asking a question. Maybe I could have worded it a little bit different when self-evaluating here. But again, 2 big games coming up for Tennessee that are going to determine how people view this season. But they got to get right, improve some things offensively. You kind of got to keep Joe Milton in the run game, though, with these next 2 big games. Kentucky's got to go get it done in Starkville this week. Can't lose to this Mississippi State team. And then you got Alabama coming into town the next week. And you still got Louisville, who's only got 1 loss, playing good on the back end of the schedule as well. Kentucky, this is a must-win for Kentucky this week in Starkville. But again, Tennessee gets the big win. Kentucky had opportunities, but Tennessee, an older veteran squad, makes plays when they had to. Going to the Plains, Auburn gets a much-needed 27-13 victory over Mississippi State. Peyton Thorne, best game of the season. But what do you know? The Auburn offense looks a bit more comfortable and honestly best when it goes tempo. 11 different receivers caught passes in that first half for Auburn. That's awesome. That's spreading it out. 27 points in total for the game and 21 first downs. Their best output all season for sure, especially in the first half. I mean, I understand they're not trying to go tempo all the time because they're thin on defense. We're getting close to the end of the year, and you want to have bodies, especially when Alabama comes out. I get what Hugh Freeze is trying to do, but your offense in today's college football, you have to try to score points. It is what it is. You have to go put your offense in the best spot possible for them to consistently score points, and that's what tempo, in my opinion. But Auburn getting the passing game going early was the difference in this game, in my opinion, because the offense got a little stagnant in the second half. The defense was starting to run out of steam like they have all year in the second half. Auburn only scored 3 points in the second half and had 3 straight 3-and-outs at one point. Hugh Freeze and the staff still trying to figure out how not to wear down the defense, like I talked about. Did they get conservative in the second half? Maybe, but also the field position wasn't great. I think Hugh Freeze knew, hey, as long as we don't turn it over, give Mississippi State a short field, we should win this game. He mentioned that today in his press conference. Give him credit on that. But again, they didn't execute as well, had 5 offensive penalties in the second half. But the Auburn defense, just a thin unit right now. As I mentioned earlier, and consistently this season, they've just worn down in second halves. Mississippi State has had some success offensively at times as well, especially in the second half. They ended up going 184 on the ground and averaged 5.3 yards per carry. Defense in the second half, let them down. Let them down. If they just played decent, I should say really in the first half, they let them down. If the defense for Mississippi State just played decent in the first half, they would have had a chance to steal it at the end. I really think so. And I don't think anybody thought Auburn scored 24 in the first half. Right off the bat, bang, bang. Bang, dude, just right off the bat. I mean, Shane Hooks had a touchdown. I think the Burton kid had a touchdown. I mean, Auburn came out firing, man. They looked really good right off the bat. Offensively, they got the ground game going in the second half, but not having Woody Marks at the running back position for Mississippi State to extend some of the explosive plays they had hurt. It really did hurt right now. Then throw in Mike Wright at quarterback, just really all or nothing. He's best when he's improvising. 2 for 12 on third down, not going to get it done. Weird game overall. Auburn jumped out early, took their foot off the gas a little bit just because they didn't have great field position. And I think they knew as long as they didn't turn it over, they were going to win this game. That's what happened. They ended up coasting to a 14-point win. Was it pretty? No. But, hey, conference win. Hugh Freeze's first conference win and really his first must-win situation. Because remember, the other 4 games they've lost, 4 in a row, at A&M, Georgia, LSU, and Ole Miss, they weren't expected to win that game. This was the first one they were expected to win in conference play. They got it. You won that one. Auburn's got a pretty good slate coming up here, something to build off of. But where do we go from here? Auburn, 4-4, 1-4 with a trip to Nashville this week. Again, Auburn's got Vandy this week, at Arkansas next, New Mexico State, and then Alabama. I mean, they win this week. There's 5. They should beat Vanderbilt. They go to Fayetteville next week, especially if Arkansas loses at Florida this week. I mean, where would their mindset be? That'll be 6. New Mexico State, who's not bad, but Auburn should still win. That's 7. Auburn could be rolling into the Iron Bowl with a chance to go win 8. Not crazy to think about. For Mississippi State, they're 4-4, 1-4 with a home conference game this weekend against Kentucky. Again, Mississippi State's been in a lot of must-win situations. This is another one. They want to get to a bowl game. This is another one. Because Mississippi State's got Kentucky this week, at Texas A&M, Southern Miss, and Ole Miss. If they want to go to a bowl game, they got to get 5 this weekend, I think. And Southern Miss will probably give them 6. I don't think they win at Texas A&M, and I don't think they beat Ole Miss right now. I know people are going to say it's the Egg Bowl. What do you think can happen? Ole Miss is the better team this year, especially if Will Rogers, maybe I've heard, is going to come back for the Southern Miss game, which would be big going into those last 2 games against 2 in-state rivals in Southern Miss and Ole Miss. They'll need him. But again, I think this is more the easily gettable game for Mississippi State than Ole Miss, if that makes sense, this week against Kentucky at home, especially a place that they had success against Kentucky in Starkville. But again, Auburn gets the 27-13 win over Mississippi State in a much-needed situation. We just talked about Ole Miss just a minute ago. Ole Miss getting a mature 33-7 win against Vanderbilt. The Rebs got the start they needed in a game like this. They got the scoring going on the 6th play of the game, scored points on their first 5 possessions. And I was digging late last night. Ole Miss, the offense has not been healthy at the same time this year for the most part. And now they're starting to get healthy. And Quinshon Judkins has been banged up with the ribs. Jordan Watkins, his hand. Caden Priestcorn dealt with tragedy with his dad passing. He's also been banged up some. Trey Harris has been banged up some. they're finally starting to get it going with all these guys, their skill guys getting healthy at the same time. That's big for this stretch coming up with Texas A&M and Georgia coming back to back. Only thing I saw offensively you'd like to see a little bit better with Ole Miss is just finishing in the red zone with touchdowns instead of field goals. Settled for 2 field goals in the first half. Got to improve on that if you're going to beat A&M and Georgia. I'll also admit I was wrong in the preseason. The Ole Miss defense is better than I thought. It is. The secondary is a little bit better than you thought. I mean, overall it is. Dejon Anthony's a solid player. Trey Washington, DeAndre Prince. They're not deep. Well, they're deeper on the defensive line than you give them credit for, though. Cedric Johnson on the edge, Jared Ivey. Those guys are pretty good players. J.J. Piguez. Those guys are pretty good players. I mean, they're deep. They don't have any dudes, but they got some depth. They're deeper than they've been in the last few years. Again, the defense, Pete Golden, give them a hell of credit. They're not some like steel curtain shut down defense, but they're good enough to win games, and they're playing well when the offense gets stagnant a little bit. I mean, not bringing Alabama into this, but I think it was a win-win for both Ole Miss and Alabama. Both schools got better on defense. Alabama with Kevin Steele, Ole Miss with Pete Golden. I think both things can be true at once. Both defenses got better this season. Why can't that be true? I think it was a great move for both parties. Both teams are benefiting from it. Why can't it be true? The defense only allowed 60 total passing yards, had 5 sacks, collected 2 interceptions. Granted, Trey Washington had both of them. And then Vanderbilt changed quarterbacks second time this season. They pulled Ken Seals. I don't think it was an injury. I think it was due to performance. They brought in Walter Taylor, the redshirt freshman, who looks like a Cam Newton / like TJ Finley kind of clone guy. Listed here at 6'7", 235. He was what he was. I think he was, like 3 for 11. I mean, what do you expect in that situation? I saw at least Lane Kiffin's honest. He didn't even know who he was when he checked in. But defense for Vanderbilt thought it played its tail off in the second half. They bent but didn't break in the second half. I mean, I don't know what to think about Vanderbilt. Such a tough job right now until they change some of the admission standards for these transfers Vandy will bring in, get some more NIL money. I mean, what's the expectations? I mean, it's tough to say, come on, Clark Lee. You hadn't won a game since week 1. I mean, that guy, everybody's laughing. I saw Brad Crawford mention the over-under 3.5 for Vandy. It was one of my guaranteed locks. Man, was I wrong. Told people to bet the mortgage. But honestly, I'm not disappointed. UNLV on that schedule was better. They had to win their 2 non-con games. I didn't expect them to win a conference game. I thought they'd go 4-0 between Hawaii, Alabama State, UNLV, and Wake, and they lost 2 of them. But if you're Ole Miss, you start out at times offensively, but this was a game you just needed to get a win. Just get out of there. No big-time injuries. And go focus on Texas A&M coming to town this week. That's a massive game. And then Georgia next week. You got to hone in on this Texas A&M game this week. Where do we go from here for both these teams? Ole Miss currently 7-1, 4-1 in the league with a game against A&M at home this weekend at 11 a.m. Big game for both A&M and Texas for Ole Miss. If Ole Miss wants to stay in the SEC West race, they have to have it. Alabama could lock up the West this week. They won this week and Ole Miss lost. I'm not saying I'm predicting that, but it's an opportunity as well. But big game, one of the more under the radar games in the country this week. I don't think Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher can afford to go get embarrassed in here. I think they can maybe lose this game, and I think he's going to be fine. You go get embarrassed. You get embarrassed. Ross Bjork could probably call up some big boosters who are not going to have it. I mean, because Jimbo Fisher has never beaten both Mississippi schools in the same year. They should beat Mississippi State at home next week. They beat Ole Miss this week. They probably will do it. They've never beaten the Mississippi schools in the same year. And people are like, well, what about 2020? They only lost 1 game. They didn't play Ole Miss. So the stat still holds true. Vanderbilt, 2-7, 0-5 with a home conference game against Auburn. Where do you go from here, man? You can only continue to get better. Kind of start focusing on maybe at this point some of the young cats. Maybe see what happens with Auburn this week because this is a sleepy game for Auburn. Not saying Auburn's going to lose this game, but it's kind of sneaky. And then kind of starting to develop some of those younger kids once this game, if it gets away from you, if you're Vanderbilt and Clark Lee. But again, Ole Miss just needed to win the game, getting the much-needed 33-7 win over Vanderbilt, heading into a crucial 2-game stretch coming up, starting this weekend against Vanderbilt. And then Georgia dominated the world's largest cocktail party. Carson Beck slowly creeping into that Heisman conversation. Long way to go, but he looked very comfortable and poised. Fast start, and the offense got rolling. Beck was 19 of 28, 350 yards and 2 touchdowns. He did a really good job of just taking advantage of the middle of the field from going back and reviewing that game against an aggressive defense led by new DC for Florida, Austin Armstrong, just aggressive guy. Give Mike Bobo credit as well. I showed the film on Twitter yesterday. It had some nice concepts, a little like banana concept. Now, someone commented, is like, well, he's got an NFL offensive lineman, so he has time to develop that. I mean, what are you going to penalize the guy because he's got good players? I mean, yeah, if I got an NFL offensive lineman like Cedric Van Pran sitting there at center blocking for me, yeah, I have a little bit more time for some routes to develop. I'm going to take advantage of that. Got to give Mike Bobo credit. Thought he did a good job. Ladd McConkey has been injured all year with a back injury. Had his best game yet. 6 catches, 135 yards, and a touchdown. I thought Georgia also, speaking of the offensive line, did a really good job sealing the edge in this game, which I mentioned was a key on Thursday's show. Because I knew Florida struggled to defend the edge in the run game. They did. They just overall did. Georgia on defense has some holes, but it makes plays when it had to all year. Thought Tyke Smith played one of his best games of the year. The defensive line for Georgia still needs to improve in the run game. It's not as good as it has been the last 2 years, but that was a lead. But especially on the edges, I think Georgia can be had on the edges. It'll be interesting to see what Missouri and Ole Miss do from that standpoint, especially Ole Miss, a really good running team. Really excited to see this defense the next 3 weeks. They have some challenges. Missouri this week, good offense, Brady Cook, Luther Burden, Mookie Cooper, Theo Weiss. They have some weapons, even Cody Schrader at the running back position. Ole Miss, just mentioned it. Plenty of weapons taking advantage of it. Then they go to Knoxville. We'll really see about this Georgia defense these next 3 weeks. Is this a springboard game for Georgia like they've used it in the past? It could be. I guess will be to be determined because the next 3 games are probably harder than they anticipated heading into the season. Now, moving to Florida, tough task to begin with in regards to just to winning this game. Great opening play, went up 7-0 to Trey Wilson to get things going. I personally thought they kind of panicked on that 4th down call, though, when they were up 10, when they were down 10-7 and ran that fake punt or fake 4th down. The snap went between Graham Mertz's legs to the running back. I didn't like that. If you're going to do that, just get under center and sneak it. Got too cute there. They never recovered after that. Block, punt, interceptions. And when I say margin for error is narrow, it wasn't like Florida just turned it over a ton and had a bunch of penalties. They only had 1 turnover and 2 penalties, depending. They had the pick. I consider the block punt a turnover, though. But really, in reality, 1 turnover, 2 penalties. But also someone's just not fitting your gap, missed tackles on defense. They were just a poor tackling defense. I think they're ranked 2nd to last right now in missed tackles. That's got to improve. But the roster isn't there right now. You go look at our lads, the depth chart, just full of older transfer portal guys that Billy and them have brought in and young guys that they have brought in that are playing. Just a combination of older transfer portal guys and freshmen and sophomores. I mean, the older guys, Damian George on the offensive line, who played not good on Saturday. Micah Mescuza, he's on the offensive line. Cam Jackson on the defensive line. Some of those older transfers. Then you have the young guys like Trey Wilson at receiver, Shamar James at linebacker is a sophomore now they signed. And then Jordan Castile, they signed the safety from Orlando. So you look at the roster, like, man, not any really of Mullen guys. I mean, Kirby made that remark about Dan Mullen picking against them and him not wanting to recruit. We all knew that. But the roster was not in great shape. As if you've kept up with the Florida program, you know it's a bunch of, like I said, older transfers and guys they brought in. But where do both teams go from here? Georgia 8-0, 5-0. They will host Missouri this week. Big 3-game stretch. We mentioned it for Georgia. Florida 5-3, 3-2. They host Arkansas in a game they need to have if they want to go to a bowl game because they got what? Arkansas this week, at LSU, at Missouri, and Florida State at home. They need one more to get to bowl eligibility. Got to have this one. But Georgia makes a statement in Jacksonville, kind of like we thought they would. Just dominated, though. Just completely dominated from start to finish there in Jacksonville. Moving on, last game to review here. Texas A&M gets the 30-17 win over South Carolina. Slow start for the Aggie offense. Number 0, Aniyah Smith, needs more touches. He needs like 12-plus touches a game, whether it's receptions, jet sweeps, just use him in the backfield some. The offense at times, and it annoys me, does not have this killer instinct of putting their foot on people's throats when they have opportunity. But on the other side of the ball, the defense has been one of the most improved overall units in the conference and probably country. They've held 5 of their 8 opponents to under 225 total yards. Held South Carolina to 33 yards rushing. And then I think one of the best inside linebackers in the league, Edgerrin Cooper, won SEC Defensive Player of the Week. Also, I think he's up there with Deontay Lawson as one of the best top 2 linebackers in the league. Guy's a beast, dude. They're both beasts. Then I like the safety. He's going to have to have a big game this week. Bryce Anderson's going to be key this week in Oxford against Ole Miss, but he had a good game against South Carolina. Talking about the Gamecocks now. Shane Beamer mentioned they stayed in the fight, and he wasn't wrong. They kept coming back. They just have so many injuries. I'm not trying to stick up for Shane Beamer and them, but a ton of injuries. But you could never take advantage of opportunities. I mean, 4th and 1 snap, they're going for it. Horrific snap. They turn it over. I think Rattler, again, played well enough. 20 for 33, 176 yards, 1 touchdown. Xavier Legette is best options out. Obviously, Juice Wells is still there. They're trying to get the true freshman Nicholas Harbor going. A couple of drops, though, didn't really help Spencer Rattler. Only 209 total yards of offense. A lot of that is credit to DJ Durkin and that Texas A&M defense. So just South Carolina just really banged up. People giving them crap. I mean, their over-under win total this year was only 5.5. I mean, speaking of where we go from here, I mean, South Carolina's 2-6, 1-5 with Jacksonville State coming to town this weekend, battle the Gamecocks. But South Carolina's got to win out to go to a bowl game. They got to win this week against Jacksonville State, beat Vandy, beat Kentucky at home, and then beat Clemson at home. I mean, that's all doable. I don't know if that team can put it together for all 4 straight weeks. Maybe they have another run to end the year like they did last year. They need all 4 to get to bowl eligibility. Texas A&M leaves Saturday's game 5-3, 3-2 with a big trip to Oxford this weekend. They're not really. They need to win it. They just cannot go look unprepared like they usually do under Jimbo Fisher on the road. This would be Jimbo Fisher's biggest road win in his tenure at Texas A&M, and probably you can go back to 2015, 16 when he was at Florida State. Probably 2015. He didn't win a big road game since 2015 at Florida State. Has not. It's another opportunity. He needs this. You go look bad. There'll be some Ross Bjort getting some big A&M Aggie donors to be like, you know what? I could come up with a couple $1 million to buy this guy out. I'm telling you, it's a big game. From people I'm talking to, it's a big game for Texas A&M. But they did get the win. Again, they couldn't have lost to South Carolina, or he could have packed his bags. Again, they can't lose next week to Mississippi State either. Sole focus, though, has got to be against Ole Miss this week. Let's go view the SEC standings as we head into week 10. Pulling it up right here. So this is where we sit right here heading into week 10, the standings. Georgia, top of the SEC East, 5-0 overall, 8-0 in the league. Missouri sitting at second. Those 2 teams play this week. Winner in the driver's seat in the SEC East. Crazy to say. I mean, Eli Drinkwitz done a phenomenal job with Missouri. But they sit 7-1 overall, 3-1 in the league. Florida coming in 5-3 overall, 3-2 overall in the conference. Tennessee 6-2 overall, 3-2 in conference. As you see, Kentucky coming in at 5th, 5-3 overall, 2-3 in the conference. South Carolina 2-6, 1-5. And Vanderbilt 2-7, 0-5. Have not won a game since week 1. Technically, going to the SEC West. Those top 3 teams right there. Alabama 7-1 overall, 5-0 in conference. Ole Miss 7-1 overall, 4-1 in conference. LSU 6-2, 4-1. Massive matchup against Alabama, driver's seat for the SEC West. Texas A&M 5-3 overall, 3-2. Auburn 4-4, 1-4 after getting their first conference win against Mississippi State this past weekend. Mississippi State also sits at 4-4, 1-4 overall, and Arkansas sits 2-6, 0-5 in the division. So again, got driver's seats games, true driver's seat games in the SEC East this week. Georgia, Missouri, and then you got Alabama, LSU. I mean, again, Ole Miss is not out of it, but they will need Alabama to lose 2 games. 2 games before they get you 2 games for them to win the SEC West. Going to next, it is time to show you. I posted it at lunch today. The Week 10 SEC Power Rankings. Let's take a look at it right here. Week 10 SEC Power Rankings. I got to get Georgia number 1. They stay that way. The most dominating performance they've had this week. Got to keep them there. Number 2, Alabama. People are going to watch you move them up when them and LSU didn't play. That injury, I'd heard about those injuries. It was Alexander Makai Wingo. I think that's big. Move Alabama. Obviously, LSU comes in at 3. That could switch this week depending on that result. Ole Miss jumps Missouri this week. I think it was a mature win for Ole Miss against Vanderbilt. It impressed me. It moved me up, or moved them up, in my opinion, in the mock 10, Week 10 SEC Power Rankings. Ahead of Missouri. Missouri, massive opportunity coming in at 5 to go, maybe have a chance to go win their 3rd SEC East Division title if they could win this game. They still got Georgia and Tennessee, some tough matchups still ahead, but man, you got to like where Missouri sits right now. Tennessee, impressive win at Kentucky this past weekend, comes in at 6. Texas A&M comes in at 7 for me. Kentucky coming in at 8. Again, not all bad for Kentucky. Could take some things from that loss. I know you always want to win, but it's the best they looked offensively. Number 9, Florida coming in. They didn't play that bad against Georgia to me. Just the margin for error in those two rosters is so small. You can't really have anything happen. But Florida coming in at 9. South Carolina coming in at 10. Auburn 11. You could flip-flop that one. You can make an argument for sure. Mississippi State coming in at 12th. Arkansas 13th. And Vanderbilt 14th. But, yeah, that's where we sit right now in the Week 10 power rankings right now for the SEC. Just in my opinion, I think that's where we sit right now in the SEC power rankings. And then, hey, I told you I would give it to you. We're not going to break it down in depth. But before we preview, you know what, let's just go ahead. Let's go ahead and preview dive into it a little bit. Sneak preview of Week 10. We talked a little bit about it, but just to show you where we're at on this. Here we go. Week 10 schedule. Like I mentioned, everybody's in action this week. 6 fantastic conference matchups. Again, getting us kicked off in the morning. One of the most underrated games in the conference in the country this week, in my opinion. Texas A&M at Ole Miss, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time Zone on ESPN. Also at 11 a.m., you got UConn, Tennessee on the SEC Network, as well as Arkansas at Florida on ESPN2. So we got 3 games in the SEC match for that 11 a.m. docket. Oh, really 4. Sorry. You got Jacksonville State and South Carolina on ESPNU, the battle of the Gamecocks. So that's the SEC big window right there. The 4 matchups right there, all trying to get all those eyes on that LSU-Alabama game to end the night. Then you got Missouri, Georgia. First matchup of the SEC CBS doubleheader at 2:30 in Athens at Sanford Stadium. Missouri at Georgia at 2:30. Auburn at Vandy's, the 3 o'clock SEC Network game. Kentucky at Mississippi State's the 6:30 p.m. SEC Network game. And then the big one, the one that's kind of got the SEC that has taken it to the next tier the last 15 years, LSU at Alabama, the 6:45 Central Standard Time kickoff on CBS. It should be another great one. That is the Week 10 slate, though. A lot of opportunity here. I mean, A&M needs to look good. Ole Miss needs to win this before they focus on Georgia. I mean, again, you heard Lane Kiffin talk about it. He's kind of messing with Jimbo a little bit, but A&M is talented. They can beat anyone on a given day. Arkansas, Florida. Arkansas needs it. What's the new offense going to look like? Remember, they got rid of Dan Enos. What's that new offense going to look like for the Razorbacks? Florida, they need one more win with 4 tough games left with Arkansas this week, at LSU, at Missouri, and Florida State coming to town. They need this one. This is the most gettable one. Battle of the Gamecocks, Jacksonville State at South Carolina. South Carolina better be careful. Rich Rodriguez and Jacksonville State look pretty solid. If they sleep through this one, South Carolina could be in trouble. We mentioned Missouri at Georgia. Georgia's going to hear all week how Missouri almost got them last year. Missouri's a solid football team this year, though. A solid football team. That'll be an interesting matchup as well. Driver's seat in the SEC East. Auburn at Vanderbilt. Auburn does not need to go overlook this. It's going to be a bring your own juice kind of game in Nashville this week. Auburn needs to be. This one worries me a little bit. I think Auburn's going to win, but it scares me just a little bit. Then Kentucky at Mississippi State. Both teams need it. Mississippi State needs this one if they want to get to bowl eligibility, in my opinion. Kentucky just needs to get right on this one. They need to take the positives from the Tennessee game on offense and bring it into this one. Mississippi State doesn't have a great secondary, especially at the safety position. If Kentucky plays like they did last week, they should win this game. And then the big one, LSU at Alabama. LSU's got some massive injuries on defense. Their best defensive tackle all season long, Mekhi Wingo, is out. Zy Alexander will be out. He got hurt against Army. I mean, got some really unproven guys going to be playing in that secondary a little bit. How does Matt House and the defense coordinator at LSU decide to play Alabama? Does he play quarters? That's what I'm kind of leaning a little bit. And then also, strength on strength, Alabama's defense against the number 1 offense in the country. Is LSU going to get theirs? If this is a game in the 20s, you like where Alabama is, in the 30s or beyond, kind of shifts a little bit towards LSU. But I think the key is how many stops can LSU get? That'll be key in this one. But getting you a few more things before we get to the week game of picks. I promise you, I would give you where I thought the top 4 of the college football playoff first reveal will be tomorrow. If I had to rank them right now, remember, I know some people are like, are you a resume guy? or are you an eye test guy? You got to be in the middle a little bit. You can't be one or the other. It's always usually somewhere in the middle. Now, I posted a poll on social media today. How do you rank top 25 wins? Is it where they were ranked at the time of the game or where they finish? I think it's kind of where they finish, at least in my opinion. But if I'm on the college football playoff committee, this is how I'm ranking it right now. We got the Georgia Bulldogs coming in at 1, especially if the dominant performance against Florida. They may not have the best wins out there, but I think they've looked the best. I think they're the most complete team in an incomplete season in college football across the board. Number 2, similar pass right now. They didn't really – Georgia's played better competition, but Michigan, they played who's been in front of them, and they dominated. I got to bring in the Wolverines at number 2. Coming in at number 3, I'm going to go Florida State. That LSU win sits well with me. Kind of coasting along against a weak ACC as it's starting to play out a little more, especially as North Carolina's starting to fade. Obviously, Clemson's fading. Louisville, that's who they could be playing in the ACC championship game. Miami's faded a little bit, but it could be Louisville, Florida State. I like the Noles sitting there at number 3. And then number 4, it's a team that didn't really overly impress me, at least on offense with the eye test. But Ohio State, I mean, they've beaten Notre Dame and Penn State. Tell me 2 better wins. Tell me 2 better. So resume-wise, I think you got to put them in the top 4. Do I think they end up in the top 4 then season's end? No. I think the offense will catch up to them. I actually think Michigan is better than them right now. Michigan may win that game by double digits. Call me crazy. I think right now, if the season ended today, you'd have to have Ohio State just off their 2 wins against Notre Dame and Penn State. So that'd be my top 4 right now. Georgia at 1, Michigan at 2, Florida State at 3, and Ohio State at 4. My next 2 teams in, we're going to go out west. Washington at 5, and hold out, look out, the Oregon Ducks. I know this is that SEC show, got a little Bo Nix flavor to it, but I think Oregon's going to end up winning the Pac-12, getting into the playoffs. Right now, though, I have them at 6. You got to give Washington the edge just because the head-to-head, but I think these 2 teams are going to meet again in the Pac-12 championship. I think Oregon's going to get them. I think Oregon's going to be in the Final Four when it's all said and done. I think Ohio State will be out. But again, I think right now, how could you not have Ohio State in if you're being realistic and objective? Because you got to look with the eye test. Again, I think at the end of the year, I expect them to lose to Michigan. I don't even know who else they'd lose to just because the Big Ten outside of Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State's not any good. But just the eye test, offensively, I don't think they'll get it done against Michigan. But so far, I mean, a win's a win. They beat Notre Dame in the last play of the game. They beat Penn State last week, or not this past week, but week 8. At home, you got to give. They have the 2 best wins in college football right now, probably. So they got to be in if the season ended today right now. I don't think they ultimately get in, but I think Oregon ultimately is going to get in, but they're sitting at 6. So again, if you've just joined us, my top 6 in the college football playoff that will be revealed tomorrow. If I'm on the committee, I'm going to Georgia 1, Michigan 2, Florida State 3, Ohio State 4, Washington 5, Oregon 6. And then still at 44% in the game. We're going to review the week 9 gambling bets. Let's review it. We're, again, not proud of it. We're just collapsing. We're just crapping down our leg right here, man. But here it was. To BYU plus 17.5. They almost covered that. I thought they would have played better. Had a chance at the end, but no, Texas got a big stop. Ended up that one. James Madison, they ended up winning. I thought they'd win by more. I thought they'd beat Old Dominion by more than 20, but I guess you can only play so well. It's college football. I just banked on them. I got them on the back end of their streak. They still won, but just didn't play as well as they have been. App State minus 17 against Southern Miss. I was confident in this one, but App State isn't the App State of old. Yeah, Southern Miss played better than I thought they would. App State won, but didn't cover the 17. Oregon, very confident in this one. The minus 6.5 at Utah made a statement. Again, I like the Ducks to make the Final Four ultimately at the end, make the college football playoff. Oregon minus 6.5 covered at Utah. Mississippi State versus Auburn, under 43.5. We had it the whole time. I'm just kidding. I never felt good about this, but it actually hit the under at 40. Incredible. 27-13 was the final. 43.5. We got lucky there. Kentucky versus Tennessee, under 51.5. We did not hit that one. Duke versus Louisville. We did hit the under there. We did hit the under on that one. Under 46. Under 46. I mean, Duke didn't put up a point. I mean, Louisville ended up, we covered that one with ease. That was the easiest one we had all day. Then Michigan State versus Minnesota, we just missed the under there of 40 as well. Hold on, let me check. I'm checking that Tennessee. I think we ended up, why am I speaking wrong on that one? Let's just make sure. Yep. So 3-5 on the week. Not good. Not good enough. That's what we should say. Not good enough for sure. We got to be better this week. We got to be better this week. I think we will, and we're going to bounce back. We got our 3 wins. Oregon, the Oregon -6.5, Mississippi State versus Auburn under 43.5, and the Duke versus Louisville under. So we're 3-5, but again, we need an 8-0 weekend. Or if I go with 10 games, 8-2, something like that. It's going to happen. This is the big slate in college football this week, week 10. This is when we get back. You're right. This guy says this every week. We're going to get back. We're just under 44%. We got about 4 weeks to get right, and SEC championship week to get above 50, right at 55%, which that's what they say good professional gamblers are at. But this year's been a weird year to bet on college football. I'm not making any excuses, but you're going to have to adjust the model a little bit heading into next season. But again, that'll wrap it up. Again, if you like what we're doing here, go like and subscribe on the YouTube channel. It's free. It's absolutely free. Go rate and review on all our podcast avenues. You can go review and rate if you want on YouTube as well. Just if you want us to cover certain things, let us know. Remember, Wednesday is our 2023-24 college basketball preview with Southeastern 14's Max Barr. Can't wait for this SEC basketball season coming up. I think you could get 8 teams in this year. I think this SEC conference this year in basketball could be the best in college across the country this year. But we covered a lot. We had a week 9 review, covered all 5 conference matchups. I gave you my college football playoff rankings, top 6 going into tomorrow's revealing. That was my top 6 going in. Remember, Georgia coming in at 1 for me, Michigan 2, Florida State 3, Ohio State 4, Washington 5, and Oregon 6. We talked a little college basketball exhibitions. Arkansas getting a massive exhibition win against Purdue. Fun game to watch. I encourage you to. Tennessee, without Santiago Vescovi and Zakai Ziegler, getting it done at Michigan State. They're exhibition games, but still, take what it is. Alabama dropped it at Wake Forest. Defense, a little bit of concern. No need to overreact. Each coach kind of handles these exhibitions different. Mississippi State trying to get healthy. They got to win against Southern Miss. Georgia beating Eastern Kentucky right now. But we're a week out from college basketball. 1 week out. Again, we'll have our preview show for the 23-24 basketball season on Wednesday. We also reviewed my gambling picks from this past week. And then really just reviewed some injury updates across the SEC. LSU, Mekhi Wingo out. Looking like for the season, unless they make the playoffs. Zai Alexander again. Be interested to see how Madhouse decides to defend Alabama. I'm going to go cover 4, but we'll preview that on Thursday's show. And then Lane Kiffin's press conference was the final thing we reviewed. But covered a lot. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Again, join us on Wednesdays. College basketball, SEC basketball preview should be a good one. Then we'll have our normal Thursday previewing all of the Week 10 matchups across the board. Every SEC team in action. No more bye weeks for the rest of the year. But again, I appreciate you joining us on this episode of Mock 10 Sports. You have a fantastic week.